your fitness business podcast snapshot. Define workplace role-playing, measuring the success of role-playing, getting your staff on board with role-playing, and mystery shoppers. All of that and more coming up in today's episode. You're listening to the fitness industry's leading fitness business podcast for owners and managers, where each week we provide an educational platform for our listeners. Our guests come from all around the world to share their expert advice, tips, and knowledge with you, the FBP family. This month's interviews are brought to you by Tribe Team Training. Welcome to the Fitness Business Podcast. I am your host, Dory Nugent. Today's episode is number 329, and our guest is Ben Ludwig. He is the owner of Beats Fitness and a subject matter expert in sales for Fitness Revolution. He is also on the board of advisors for International Strength Training Association and is a consultant for F45 Fitness. But before we start, here's a message from our podcast partner, Tribe Team Training.
Are you interested in increasing your center's income and your trainer's income from small group training? Tribe Team Training is the new way to get more members engaged in small group training and paying extra. Click the Tribe Team Training link in the show notes or go to tribeteamtraining.com.au/podcast for your free formula to see how much income you can make from small group training.
Ben Ludwig is here today to share his expert advice about the power and place of role play. Let's hear what great information Ben has for all of us today.
Today, we're actually going to talk about role playing. Again, as a sales director, you know what? And I think you agree, it's a love-hate because you know it's really good and it does really work. It's just trying to get your staff to partake in it sometimes can be very challenging.
Absolutely.
We had Alan Leach on literally, I think just like 3 weeks ago, and he's really big with the role playing in his sales department at the Westwood clubs. And we laughed a little bit about it. So I'm very excited to hear your take on role playing. So let's get started by, Ben, why don't you give our listeners your definition of how you define role play?
Yeah, so my definition of role play is intentionally creating scenarios for your staff where you know they're going to get into situations where they might not be as comfortable having conversations with customers, with other employees, or with guests. And being able to create those scenarios gives them an opportunity to practice their craft, which is being the best in those situations.
I love that you didn't just say, hey, for sales. I love that you used it to different scenarios with staff or even with your guests. So I like that you kind of broaden your definition of role playing. And kind of that's where I was leading into next is besides just your sales team, where else can you use the role playing? Kind of answered this already in your business.
You can use it everywhere, Dory. I, in my career, have created success in the fitness industry through role-playing every scenario. Mm-hmm. Having an uncomfortable conversation with a client and the fact that they're not sticking to their nutrition can be tough for a trainer. So practicing that conversation. I've even gone as far, Dory, this is actually kind of a little bit laughable for me, but I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with lower level managers and how to have a disciplinary conversation with their staff. There's a right way and a wrong way there. So when it comes to any conversation that a staff member hesitates in having, that's a great opportunity to role play.
And I agree. Sometimes we're hard on our lower level management because they didn't handle a situation correctly. And a lot of times it's just not their fault. They're just not either comfortable with it. They're not used to it. They don't know how to handle it. And there definitely is a right way and a wrong way. And role playing makes that so much easier. And it's something if you just go over and over again, it also becomes natural.
It does. Oftentimes I look back on my early management career and I just wanted to handle all those situations myself. And I realized over the years that the reason why I was good at handling those situations is because I handled them so often. So being able to help other management or people that had been working for me practice those scenarios is how I was able to get them better at the scenarios that they may not have been comfortable with.
Right, right. And role play. Now, you say that you're a sales expert for Fitness Revolution. You're also a sales consultant for F45, two totally different size clubs. So do you feel that the role play, your scenarios are the same, whether it's a 30-member operation or whether it's a 13,000 person operation?
The scenarios can be very different, but at the end of the day, people are people. And no one wants to be a guinea pig. And one of the things that I've really noticed is whether or not I'm standing in front of 5 people for a class, or whether or not I'm, dealing with my 10th member concern today because I have 10,000 members, I need to practice those scenarios for multiple reasons. Number one, to make sure that I'm comfortable in those scenarios. But number two, to make sure that it doesn't mentally fatigue me. If I'm in a bigger club with a ton of members, well, that 10th person can really wear me down if I'm not practiced and ready for those conversations. Being prepared and knowing what I need to say within those scenarios allows me to not be as mentally drained once I have some of those conversations with upset members or disciplinary conversations, or even just a class. If I have to think about everything that I'm doing inside of a class, that can be exhausting.
Mm-hmm. And not only just exhausting, it sometimes catches you and
right.
then puts you on most people, your first reaction is to be defensive, which is the worst way to respond to something. But it is human nature to react that way. And role playing, I have found, just helps to kind of reteach your brain not to go right into being defensive, but into being into problem solving.
You're so right. You're so right.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the benefits of role playing. Again, let's get a little more specific about why we want to practice role playing.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, the best reason as to why it's so beneficial, Dory, is because it allows you to auto default into something that you know works. Whenever it comes to goal setting for a client, if I have a trainer that's talking to a guest and is asking those same questions of what they want to accomplish and why they want to accomplish it, what they're doing is they're taking a process that they've been trained on and they're putting it into practice. If I haven't practiced these scenarios and I get caught off guard with a situation to where I'm not comfortable, or someone says they give me a response that maybe I wasn't prepared for, like, oh, I don't have any goals, I just want to get into shape, right? Well, if I don't know how to handle those scenarios, then I can very easily get uncomfortable and I can take the path of least resistance. And that's unfortunately what most people in the people business do, is if they're not prepared, they take the path of least resistance, which again leads to nowhere, because I'm not asking the right questions to get my customer to give me the information as to what they want to accomplish and why they want to accomplish it. And then number two is I'm putting myself in a scenario where I no longer have the power. I no longer am asking the right questions, and I'm putting my customer in the scenario to where I'm probably going to get an answer like, I want to think about it, in a sales scenario, or I'm putting my customer in a scenario where they might not feel like it's a win-win situation. If it's maybe, one of the scenarios where the customer felt that they were wrong, that I'm trying to make a situation better.
Mm-hmm. And also consistency on answers as well. Role playing, I found, helps throughout your management, whether it's lower management, mid, or higher. If that member is not obviously happy with the answer down below and they go on up higher, it creates consistency. We all know how we should answer the question or how we should try to diffuse the problems.
Absolutely.
So I always like consistency. That seems to always work well in any organization.
I think every business owner wants more consistency, right? Welcome to 2020.
How do we measure the success of role playing?
The best way to measure success of role playing, Dory, is to continuously audit and to have a schedule as to when you're going to audit. What that does is that allows you to be able to make sure that the consistency is there, number one, and it allows you to be able to give feedback, number two, when it comes to how your role plays are going. In order for me to be able to keep that success going, I have to make sure that I'm measuring what it is that I'm expecting. And audits are a great way to be able to do that. It doesn't have to be a generic audit form. The beauty of auditing my own process is I can create a form based on what I'm looking for. What sort of questions have I taught you as an employee to ask? What sort of processes have I asked you to go through? Are you checking all the boxes of what my expectations are or what my process is? And when I do that, I'm able to create the consistency that I'm looking for. And then the second thing that I'm able to do is make sure that everyone knows that I'm looking. The funny thing is, if it's not measured, then it never gets done, right? So that's the benefit of auditing the role play.
Yeah, and one thing that you mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm just going to rewind for a second. You talked about when I first became in the sales department, and I'm gonna stick in the sales role playing aspect of this. Is somebody would come in, they would want to join, or they were inquiring about joining. I would give them my spiel, and then they would say, "Okay, well, I'm just going to think about it." And I used to be like, "Okay, well, here's my card, and let me know, when you'd like to join." And I just let them walk out the door, and I guess cross my fingers that they would call me back. I never knew to follow up with questions. I didn't know what questions to follow up. I just stopped the conversation, which is the worst thing that you possibly can do in a sales role.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that, Dory, because I've seen it happen both ways. I've seen people that just, hey, awesome, hope to see you back next week. And they just, cross their fingers. But I've also seen the opposite happen. I've seen people that have gone way too far and just pushed and pushed and pushed and asked the wrong questions or didn't have any ammo to begin with because they didn't ask the right questions at the beginning. So it turned into a pushy salesperson, which made sure that the person didn't come back, right? So again, I think it's important for us to discuss the importance of role play for that reason as well, to make sure that we don't give up sales, but also that we're not pushing people away too.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, hey, the wrong questions, what are the right questions? Let's talk a little bit, let's dive into that a little bit as far as who and how do we know what are the wrong questions and what are the right questions? Where does that come from?
Absolutely. It all depends on what type of scenarios that you're trying to hone in on when it comes to role play. If you're talking about a sales specific scenario, well, we work in the fitness business, and the right questions are going to be, what is it that your prospect wants to accomplish? Why do they want to accomplish that? And then how deep can I go into why they want to accomplish it? We have surface level reasons. I want to lose weight because I want to feel better. And then we have some real deep seated issues, right? People want to lose weight because they don't have the self-esteem that they had 10 years ago. They're not able to keep up with their kids, and they want to be able to go to the park and play with their kids, right? There's some deep-seated things that people maybe won't admit to right off the bat. But if I ask the right questions as a salesperson, I'll get down to the meat and potatoes of what it is they want to accomplish and why. So from a sales scenario, I think that's very important, is to understand the buying factors or the emotional reasons as to why they want to accomplish these things. The second scenario, Dory, that I think is very important for us to know what the right questions are is whenever I'm practicing how I'm going to have a goals conversation with a guest, or if I'm giving a class, the execution of that has to do with really the owner. Number one, what sort of experience do I want my customers to have? And then what does that experience feel like for the customer? The best way for me to know whether or not I'm doing that properly is to put myself in that scenario, right? So taking those classes, watching the instructor, do I feel like the instructor cares about me? Do I feel that they're giving me the experience that I expect? That's where those answers come from. And then the third scenario that I think you need to be careful of is whenever a customer maybe is upset. And number one, I think it's important to understand where they're coming from, and then trying to be able to find conflict resolution. There's a ton of information on conflict resolution out there. So I think it's pretty easy to find, what are the right and wrong questions. But I think the most important aspect when it comes to upset customers, Dory, is ensuring that the customer feels heard, that you really care and that you really want to help them. If I can come at the situation from that mindset, I'm more often going to ask the right questions because I'm trying to help.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And what I kind of, you touched it about customer experience. There is no doubt every single expert that I have talked to during this whole COVID epidemic or pandemic, and we've talked to them about, how do we get our gyms back up and running? How do we keep the members? How do we get the members that froze back into the club. And it always comes back to customer experience. Absolutely. And I think there's some basic things when you think of customer experience, you have a friendly front desk staff, you keep your facility neat and clean. But I think there's some more fine tuning. And I believe that practicing role playing, like you said, for certain tough scenarios and situations helps your customer experience, how you handle that. Somebody, as you would agree, could be very upset and they're going to leave one of two ways. They're going to leave and absolutely bash your club because it was handled terribly, or they feel heard, which they feel maybe we got a resolution, maybe we didn't, but they at least feel heard, and they're going to leave feeling at least somebody cared and somebody listened to them.
Absolutely. I love that you said that, Dory, because now it's more important than ever. I've been saying that since the beginning of the pandemic, that the fact that customer experience is no longer a buzzword. It's now an essential piece of your business. And I believe that even more so now, Dory, because think about how many options people have. If I have a bad experience, even just with a front desk worker, just they didn't know what to say, they handled me improperly, they made me wait too long, I didn't feel like they cared about me. Well, guess what? It's no longer, I'm going to cancel my membership and go down the street to a different gym. I can just go home. There's so many virtual options now. Everyone is pushing virtual training. So I can go home and get the same workout if I want to, if I feel that I had a bad experience in your studio. So that's another reason why role play is so important, because sometimes you're only going to get one chance with people.
You are so right. One chance. I agree with you on that. Let's talk about our listeners right now. Let's say we've got a bunch of sales. They're not the director. They're the membership associates in your club, or sales associates. I know there's so many very creative names actually now, customer experience associate. But our listeners out there, and they're like, okay, this is cool, but nobody is doing this in my club. What's your advice for our listener that's like, well, how do I get started? Like, where do I go? Who do I ask?
Yeah. The first and foremost piece of advice that I would give, Dory, is let people see you mess up. I know that sounds crazy, but in my career, that is really how I got my teams to role play, is I let them see me fail. I let them see that I wasn't perfect. I let them see that practice in any form or fashion is better than not practicing. Why would I want to step into a playoff baseball game and that be my first swing at a pitch, right? It doesn't make any sense. So as salespeople, we have to understand that this is our profession. This is what we have chosen as a career path. And the only way we're going to get better is by practicing. And when we see our leaders practice, when we see our leaders messing up a little bit, that makes it okay for us to do the same thing. I think that's where the disconnect typically is sales managers or general managers tend to shy away from it themselves, because they want people to see them as the best and they want people to know that they know all, right? But the problem with that is you're going to earn respect of membership counselors or sales advisors or whatever you want to call them by letting them see you in the mix with them.
Mm-hmm. And again, I know I have a tendency to just say sales. It's not just sales. I want to make that clear. It's your personal training staff. It's your front desk staff. I mean, this topic is for everyone that works within the club, even your hospitality team. So
absolutely.
I do want to make a note of that. Let's talk about our owners, our managers, and department heads that are listening right now. How should they start to implement role playing in their staff meetings?
Sure. Now, that depends on how comfortable you are, number one, with your processes and how comfortable your staff is with your processes. The less comfortable, the more you need to role play. But also number two is how often are you in these type of scenarios? If we went down one route, and let's just use sales for an example, Dory. If I am seeing 1 to 5 new sales per month, maybe it's a smaller business or a solopreneur, so to speak. In those sort of cases, maybe I can practice monthly, right? If I'm seeing sales or guests more often, maybe a few times a week, then I probably need to practice weekly. If I'm seeing more than 15 sales, maybe a sale every other day, then I need to practice daily. So I think those are the two things to take into account is number one, how comfortable is your staff in these certain scenarios? And then number two is how often am I seeing those scenarios? I think to use a different example, if I have a front desk worker that's seeing angry customers every single day, well, then I need to keep that role play consistent and I need to practice those scenarios every single day. If I'm seeing one angry customer a quarter, well, then maybe I can practice monthly, right?
I hope my staff, my former staff, is out there listening, because we would do this role playing, right? And
Yep.
we would do a bi-monthly meeting, and we would each meeting at the very end, I'd let them get comfortable and relax. We talk about other agenda items first. And then at the very end, we would pick one. I'd just do one topic. And first, we would talk about it. And then we would script. We would write out. Some people learn, I found, much better by writing things out. And then we would practice. And they would get so silly. And they would just hate it, you know. But I knew how much they hated it, so I at least tried to make it fun. And when I would hear them take our script or a form of our script and use it in their daily, their shift, I would try to make a big deal about it, be like, oh my gosh, that's it. You did it, like it'll get easier and better as you do it more and more.
That's huge. That's huge, Dory. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was one of the things that I implemented as well throughout my fitness career. Is whenever I was in leadership within studios and gyms, that was one of the things that I would always do. Is if I had a newer advisor that followed my process to a T, even if the advisor didn't sell that membership, I would buy him a drink, give him a high five, just celebrate the fact that he stuck to the process, because I knew that if he stuck to the process every time, it was going to pay dividends. So I wanted him to know that I cared less about whether or not he closed the sale and cared more about whether he followed the process to make sure that he helped the person make the best decision.
How do you get them to change their mind? How do you get them to change their mindset on liking role play?
Yeah. I think of specifically one exercise that we used to do. It was the overcoming objection game, right? And what we would do is we had specific rebuttals for each objection, and we would just, hot potato. And I would throw an objection at you and you had to give me the rebuttal as quickly as possible. And if you missed, you were out, right? And it was little things that you can do like that to make it fun. It made it interesting. It got people on the edge of their seat and no one wanted to get out, right? So the second they missed one, they would get so mad, So just making it fun like that sometimes is a way to be able to change up the expectation of what role play is. It doesn't always have to be uncomfortable. It doesn't always have to be awkward. Not that it won't be. Sometimes it is, just because you have to practice the hard ones and you're not always going to know what to say. But that's why you're practicing.
That's great advice. I love that. So again, make it fun. I don't know, maybe there's some people out there listening, raising their hand going, oh, I love role playing.
I was not one of them early on in my career, let me tell you. But the more that I saw the results come from it, I learned to love it.
Shifting gears. Let's talk about the mystery shopper coming in and forcing somebody into a role play experience. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of mystery shoppers. However, I'm only a fan of mystery shoppers for studios and gyms that already role play. It's only going to show you how good your practice is. I've seen it so many times, Dory, to where I look at a mystery shop and I see just completely off the wall remarks from salespeople or trainers, because, and again, what that tells me is that it wasn't an overnight thing that they decided to say. Over time, they got a little bit off the script, or they said something that got someone to buy, or said something that got a mad customer off their back, right? And they just started learning on their own what quote unquote worked, right? So a mystery shop is only as good as your role play, and it's going to show you the results of the role play. If I'm consistent with practicing these scenarios, then my staff will automatically go into default mode, right? Which is my process, as long as I've been practicing. And then that mystery shop just shows me whether or not that's working.
So our managers and our owners out there listening, let's just peel away a little bit about where are you finding the mystery shopper? Who's the mystery shopper? Can you get a little more specific on that for us?
Sure. I think, so for myself, I've been the mystery shopper myself a lot. Even in my consulting, I'll call my studios that I'm consulting with just to see what the trainer says. I'll ask about price to see if they're going to give it to me. I'll ask what the classes are like to see if they have an idea of what to say. Because think about it this way. There's a lot of people that are going to find you online that might have no clue who you are or what you do, right? So if I don't have an elevator speech prepared to tell you who I am, then I could very easily get a response like, we're a gym and we have weights and you should come check it out, right? How weak is that? But you would be surprised, Dory, how often I hear that. So there's plenty of companies out there that you can contract. However, before going that route, I would recommend being the mystery shopper yourself or using friends and family members first, because they're going to be able to give you a little bit of insight before you start spending money on something to be able to perfect your process. So make that as an owner or manager, make those calls from an anonymous number or make those calls from one of your friends' cell phones and see what your staff says. I guarantee you they probably won't sound as good as you think they do.
Get your pen ready now for Keep Me's Fit Bizpiration.
What are your 3 tips to launching a role play culture in your business?
Well, Dory, step number 1 is to start by leading. In order for my staff to believe in the fact that role play is important, they've got to see me do it. And when they see me do it, it's also okay for them to see me mess up sometimes. That's number 1. Number 2 is celebrate the small wins. And whenever your staff sticks to the process, high five them. Man, people need to know that you appreciate the fact that they're sticking to a process, even if they don't win that specific scenario. It's okay. You know, as an owner or manager, that it's going to turn into success long-term. And then last but not least, measure, measure, measure. The only way for me to know whether or not my role play is working is if I constantly evaluate it. And that comes in 2 forms. That comes in the form of auditing, to make sure that my staff knows how to handle these scenarios. They're asking the right questions. They're handling the objections properly. But also the second way, Dory, is to deliberate on what it is that we are practicing during the role play. Is in order for you to get better, I've got to constantly give you feedback. So when you're doing those role plays within those sales scenarios or within those customer service scenarios, always give immediate feedback to help your staff continuously get better.
Keep Me. Smarter member retention. KeepMe.ai.
It's time to get back to the show.
Ben Ludwig, I can't thank you enough for coming on to our show today and sharing all of your information and your wealth of knowledge about role playing with our listeners.
Oh, it's been a blast, Dory. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, how many of our listeners do you think tomorrow morning are going to be signing themselves up for role-playing activities?
You know what, Dory? Every single one. That's how convincing this podcast was.
Listen, if they want to get better, right? They've got to grow. Right. They've got to grow, and you have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable,
Exactly.
With 2020, we should all be very comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Man, you are right about that.
And so what do you have going on? You have anything coming up? What's your schedule look like the next couple of months?
Yeah, it's quite busy. I've got quite a few speaking engagements coming up. I've got quite a few owner trainings coming up. The best way to be able to find me, Dory, is number 1, you can check us out. I'm the subject matter expert with Fitness Revolution. You can find us at frnation.com. We have multiple different styles of owner trainings there. I teach a lot of them myself, so I highly recommend looking up the website. Or you can always reach out to me for individual business ideas or even consulting as well. My email is ben@frnation.com. So you can reach me there and I'll be able to answer any questions from that point.
A super big thank you to Ben Ludwig for coming on our show today. And I just have to say, I have witnessed firsthand how the power of role play can improve your sales numbers, your communication with members, and even the communication between your staff. I challenge you to incorporate role-playing exercises and some mystery shopping into your 2021 business plan. Now it's time for a message from our podcast partner, One Fit Stop.
OneFitStop is modern fitness studio software built for the growing multi-location studio, providing scheduling, client management, programming, payment collection tools, and more that will set your business up to grow. To find out more, go to onefitstop.com or click on the link in today's show notes.
Quickfire 5.
It's time to reveal who our guest is for this week's Quickfire 5 questions. Four-time Olympian and founder of Athlete Assessments, Bo Hansen is our special guest today for Quickfire 5. Bo, are you ready?
Yes, whenever you're ready. Go for
All right. Well, welcome to the show. Here is your first question. Who inspires you in life and why?
So, yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm inspired by a lot of different people, actually. And when I think about the work that I do now, a lot of the people that inspire me are the coaches that we work with. So we spend a lot of our time working with coaches around the world, and it inspires me that they are helping other people to get better every single day. So that's a big part of my reason why as well.
Yeah, you've had such a unique path in life that I'm sure that has to be a very hard question for you to answer. I'm sure you've been around a lot of very inspiring people.
Yeah, it's like most things, though. It's the everyday people that you meet that are just going about doing what they do, and they have the ability to get up every day to do that. And yeah, I've met a lot of really, really famous people, but at the end of the day, it's again those people that try to really help others that inspire me the most.
Perfect. All right. Well, that'll take us right into question number 2, which is, why do you do what you do?
So a big part of why I do what I do is that we try to provide the same sort of experience from an outcome in terms of I had a coach who looked after me for 3 Olympics, and, you know, the relationship that he built with myself and my fellow team members, it helped me to, you know, we didn't win gold medals. We beat a lot of gold medalists. We won some great things, but, you know, we got 3 Olympic bronze medals, but, you know, that's sort of okay, I guess. But the reality is it's not about that. And it's about the fact that I can look back on that experience knowing that we didn't leave a stone unturned, and that it's fundamentally a positive experience in my life. And for a lot of athletes, that's not the case.
Number 3, if you were not doing what you are doing, what would you be doing?
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to have to say that I might still be doing it, to be honest. Like whether you get paid a lot of money to help people and coach people or not, you know, the fact is that when I left school, you know, that was a long time ago now, I started on this career path in trying to help teach others. My parents were both teachers, and the fact is that this is literally all I've done. I knew what I wanted to do, but it's who you do it with, and whether I'm volunteering, which I've done a lot of, and volunteering my time, or getting paid to do this stuff. It's still doing this work.
With that, what is one book, podcast, or Facebook group that you could recommend to our listeners?
So a book that had a massive impact on me was a book written by Michael Scott Peck, M. Scott Peck, and it was The Road Less Traveled. And it was a really interesting book. It's pretty heavy going, and I read it a long time ago. It's a book which addresses some of the bigger challenges that we face as people, and, you know, it helps you be a little bit more aware of your own sort of challenges and some of the choices that you make in life. And so, yeah, that's definitely a book that I would recommend. And I'd also recommend another much more recent one, a book that's had a massive impact. I do a lot of work in sport, obviously, and there's a book on my shelf here called Legacy, written by Daniel Kurtz, all about the study of the All Blacks. And if you work in sport, you know the All Blacks, the most successful sporting team in the history of all sport for more than 100 years now in terms of their win-loss record. And it's really the study of the degree to which they value behaviours and culture as being a driving reason why they're successful. So yeah. Legacy is an excellent book.
Yeah, having a Division I athlete in our family, Legacy has been passed around our house. Well, next week you're going to be on our show. Could you just give us one action item the FBP family will take away from your interview?
This is an opportunity for reflection, and, you know, I know we're coming up to the holiday season, and that may or may not mean a busier or quieter time. For us, it's a quieter time here in Australia, and people often take an opportunity to reflect on the year that has been and what's going to be different next year. We talk a lot about behaviours, and I hope that I can give a little insight today into what sort of behaviours you might have, and to be more aware of the behaviours of others, and to find ways to work more collaboratively with people. And I think that's been massively evident in how the globe has decided to deal with the COVID crisis, and countries that chose to work together and confront it as a united front have tended to fare a lot better. And I think that that's something we can do on a real local level as well.
Hey, Fitness Business Podcast family. Sarah Pellegrino here, your host of The Value Proposition. Each month, I'm bringing you an insightful conversation with a different industry supplier so you can learn the value they bring to the fitness industry above and beyond their product or service. Don't miss this month's episode of The Value Proposition for IntelliVideo, going live on Friday, December 18th. Be sure to tune in if you're a club owner or operator who has considered launching a digital fitness platform or is struggling with the concept and where to start. We will be focusing on digital fitness, technology trends, the service IntelliVideo provides their clients, and the content health club operators should be focusing on. As always, you can download episode 330, The Value Proposition for IntelliVideo, anywhere you listen to your podcasts or from our website. You can watch the vodcast on our YouTube channel or on our website, fitnessbusinesspodcast.com.
Hi there everyone, Chantal here. Thank you for joining me for this week's throwback episode as we get very close to the end of 2020. Now our throwbacks are when we take a little trip down memory lane and I share some of my all-time favorite episodes from the first 5 years of the show. This week I am bringing you not one, but two featured episodes, shows 33 and 54, and my special guest for both of those episodes was motivation scientist and amazing author Michelle Seeger. Show 33 was called No Sweat, How the Simple Science of Motivation Can Help You Deliver a Lifetime of Fitness. And show 54 was called Self-Care Behavior and the Effect It Has on Trainer-Client Relationships. Both episodes delved into many areas of Michelle's phenomenal book, also called No Sweat. And by the way, if you are in the fitness industry and you haven't yet read this book, do yourself a favor and read it before 2021. I promise you will be very happy that you did. If you haven't yet heard either of those episodes, then make sure that you take a listen today. All you need to do is click on the link in today's show notes or go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com and search for episodes number 33 and 54. Happy listening.
For more information about Ben Ludwig, head on over to our show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. Next up, a message from our founding partner, Active Management.
Hi, FBP family. It's JT from Active Management, the founding partner of the Fitness Business Podcast. Thanks to the amazing technology at our fingertips, we can now work with clients all over the world. But right now, you can join the free online Active Management Facebook community. It's an amazing group of people just like you. Sure, I share weekly resources, but it's the power of the community that you will experience that will make this your go-to Facebook group. Remember, it's free, fun, and inspirational. Go to facebook.com/groups/Active Management Community.
What you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.